A few months ago, Yewande from Knit the Blues interviewed me for a channel, and we spoke about something that I hadn't really thought of in a very long time, and it's kind of stayed with me, and I decided to do some knit and chat video and talk about it today. So I've got a bit of some notes here just in case I start repeating myself and fumbling around. So we spoke about the guilt of knitting, well, as a knitwear designer. I I told you that for a long time I used to feel guilty every time I would sit and knit during the normal working hours, and I felt like I shouldn't be knitting. I should be doing more serious work tasks. So for the longest time I thought my day should be made up of admin, doing all the marketing stuff and everything else that was business related, submissions. But I thought my knitting was something that I should do in my own spare time at the end of the day, in the evenings, on weekends, but it wasn't something I should be doing during the working hours. So, of course, naturally, that led to a lot of stress and feeling behind in my knitting and struggling to finish things on time. And I think all of that stems from having been in the corporate space. So, just a bit of some background. I did a Bachelor of Business Administration in Finance. So, right from the time I graduated, I've been working in the corporate space in finance. And you'll notice that when you're having a corporate job, you don't get to do things that you like and enjoy sometimes, even though you would have started something because you liked it. But most of the work tasks are not exactly the most enjoyable, but you just gotta do what's gotta be done, and that's it. So it's not sometimes about the joy, even though there are those moments where you actually do the stuff that you enjoy, but your day is not made up of things that you enjoy. Mostly it's just things that just have to be done. So that was the thing for me. I felt I shouldn't be knitting and watching a podcast or watching a movie. It has to be serious stuff when it's during the day. So one thing that I had actually forgotten, I guess, was that um, my business is selling knitting patterns, and I do not just write a pattern and assume that somebody's going to imagine how it's going to look like. I have to knit the sample, photograph it, talk about it, and everything else. So without those knitted samples, there is no business. But somehow I felt I had to do other things other than the knitting itself. And of course, this stems from that mindset that work is not supposed to be fun and enjoyable. And when you turn your hobby into a job, that's the kind of challenge that you face. So I used to only knit later in the day, no structure as far as my knitting. I could schedule other tasks and do those to-do lists and checklists and everything, but there was none for my knitting because I felt I had to do it whenever I had some time. And the weirdest thing about that is I would actually be okay with knitting samples for publications or magazines, or if it was something I was doing for another company and something that I had signed a contract for, I could sit down and do it during my working hours, and it felt okay for me to do it. But I didn't feel okay doing it for myself. And the interesting thing is that I've seen and I've heard other designers that I chat with talk about the same thing, that we always brush it aside and say, oh, I only knit for an hour a day, I don't have time, I only knit for 2 hours. But knitting samples takes the largest chunk of time than any other task we can do in our businesses. So ideally it should be allocated some reasonable amount of time in the schedule. And when it comes to scheduling, it's a bit tricky. Right now I'm knitting samples and working on designs that are going to launch in April, late April, May, and going forward. What I'm knitting right now is definitely not coming next month or April, unless if it's maybe a pair of socks or a single skein shawl. But with the larger projects, I have to work months ahead. So if I do not allocate enough time to do those samples, that is why you end up being off season and pushing designs to the next season. So I had to learn to allocate time for my designs in order for my schedule to actually be something I can work with without feeling like I'm always behind, I'm always playing catch up. And it has taken a while. So one of the books that I read during the time that helped me make that decision is by Mike. Okay, I don't remember his surname, but it's Mike Halowitz or something. I might be pronouncing it wrong, but I'll put it down. So the book is Clockwork, Design Your Business to Run Itself. So in his book, he talks about the queen bee role. So which is the most important role that you have to protect, which actually drives your business and makes your business work. And as a knitwear designer, it's actually designing patterns, right from conceptualizing to swatching, working on the samples, changing things around. If I can tell you right now, with this top that I'm wearing, it's called the Leroy top, I had to do the yoke twice. I started it and it got too low and it was kind of floppy. So when I was knitting the sample, I had to do it twice. And it's the same with this dress that I'm knitting. I had to do this section twice. So there's a lot that goes into designing. There's a lot of back and forth, frocking. Sometimes you have to frock the entire project. But if you don't allocate enough time, you might end up only launching 4 or 5 patterns in a year. And that may be sustainable for some, but for most designers, you need to launch maybe at least once a month to have a sustainable business. So that was the thing that I had to sort out. So when I read that book, I learned that there were some tasks that I had to protect, which was my time to design. As much as marketing, admin, submissions and everything else are important, but my core business is designing my own patterns, putting them out there, creating that cohesive collection every single time. And there are other tasks, of course, that are important, but the most important is designing. So I need to allocate more time on that. What I eventually did, and I haven't been doing that this year, I've kind of been winging it. So what I eventually did in the past 2 years or so was to allocate 2 hours a day for admin. So every morning after I've done all the morning stuff that I need to do, had breakfast, I'll sit down and do 2 hours of administrative work. That meant that even if it's looking through all the patterns, changing photos if they are not working well for some listings, particularly on Etsy, and anything right from responding to test knitters and any pattern questions, I would do that during those 2 hours, and writing patterns. So back in the day, I would spend the whole day writing a pattern right at the end of the sample knitting. But now what I do, I write my patterns in stages. I'll maybe start off with the first page where you do the description and list everything that needs to be there for the pattern, and that's just for one day. And there's the grading on a separate day, and the writing, particularly when it comes to sweaters, the part that takes the most of your time and effort when you're designing is the top part, the yoke. So that will take a day on its own, where I can write for those 2 hours. I'm just writing this section after doing the calculations, and then writing the body and the sleeves is something I'll do on a separate day, and mostly include the finishes. So I no longer write a pattern in one day, because that meant sitting there for 4 or 5 hours just doing the writing. But now, if I'm splitting the time, I can easily write the pattern whilst I'm working on the sample. I've already written this top part of the dress, and now as I'm working on the body, I'm just knitting and taking some notes. So I'll write that section soon, probably beginning of next week, because I'm hoping I'll have made some progress. But ultimately, that means that I have enough time allocated for my sample knitting. And when I'm sample knitting, I won't be feeling guilty, because I would have spent the time to do all the admin, answered the emails. I don't have any outstanding emails in my mailbox right now. Or for the past 2 years, actually, I haven't really been behind on emails. So that's one of the things that I've noticed that were standing in my way. And I remember when I started out, I joined the group Budding Designers on Ravelry, and that was something that as designers would talk about. And it was like almost all of us will be talking about, it's impossible to get some time to knit during the day. It's impossible to find some time to sit down and knit. You have to do your admin. And now that I'm thinking about it, you need to create systems that work for your business, systems that accommodate the most time-consuming task in your business, and the task that actually makes you put out your work. Because there's no way someone will buy something and when I'm just telling them this is the idea, this is the dress that I'm making, buy the pattern. When you make it, you'll see how it looks like. Somebody has to see my sample first, so that makes it a very important task. So I'm so happy that I've finally kind of reframed my mindset around sample knittings. So nowadays I'll have a full day of sample knitting, and each week I normally allocate Wednesday as my sample knitting day, where I'm just knitting and I'm not doing anything else unless there are questions from sample knitters or there's something else that comes up. But sample knitting day is a Wednesday, and of course I do knit every single day a couple of hours, but that is one day where I say I'm not doing anything else other than knitting or swatching for a new design or just coming up with the concepts or anything. But it's my creative day, and I'm working towards actually making it 2 days instead of 1 in a week. So I'm playing catch up on that, and I'm hoping that by the second half of the year I'll be able to allocate 2 days, maybe Wednesday and Thursday or Monday and Wednesday. I'll see which one works, so I can just minimize my admin on those days and only respond to test knitters and just focus on the creative part of the business. And I think that has made things much more fun, that I do not feel guilty knitting. I do not feel guilty picking out a TV show to watch for the day when I'm knitting. And I think I have really come a long way off. So I just wanted to find out, is there any other creative person out there who feels the same about their maybe hobby turned business, and you feel like you shouldn't be doing the fun stuff? It's too much fun. You should be doing the more serious stuff. Have you experienced that, whether you are a cook or a pastry chef or a knitwear designer or someone who designs clothes, anything really? Do you ever have those moments where you feel you should be doing the fun stuff during your working hours, even though the fun stuff is actually the work that has to be done? So thank you so much for joining me as I was just thinking out loud on this topic. If there's any other designer related topic that you're interested in, some questions or some stuff that you've wondered about as far as knitwear designing as a business is concerned, put them below in the comments, and I'll be happy to do separate videos to address whatever issues you want to talk about in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me. See you next time.